I'm going to start off with just a little footnote before we get into the inspection on this, and for the benefit of those of us visiting from foreign countries and areas other than Southern California, a special welcome to you, and to tell you where we are in Southern California with the use of asphalt rubber and rubberized asphalt concrete, kind of a state of the state. Somebody's producing rubberized asphalt concrete somewhere in Southern California practically every business day. All of our major material producers own their own blending equipment now. Since about 1992, the market has really blossomed in Southern California, in particular Los Angeles, Orange, and Ventura counties, to a lesser extent San Bernardino and Riverside counties, and to a somewhat lesser extent also San Diego. So really, rubberized asphalt concrete is basically a commodity these days in Southern California. We're using it all the time. Before we start off, I just would give a footnote here. Ann Stonex is here to my right, and Ann and I have discussed kind of the state of where we're at in the overall education and training, in particular in Southern California. And probably the biggest gap that remains in training is in the suitability and application of rubberized asphalt concrete for different purposes and design. And Ann has an excellent PowerPoint that she's produced. If you feel you need training in the structural design aspects of pavements, contact MacTech, and she can arrange for that training because it's very important that we use the material in the proper application and the proper thickness. Remember, any material, when it's used in an improper application or an improper thickness, can fail. So what you want to do is you don't want to doom your contractor and producer to failure if you're a designer or a specifier. You want to use the right material in the right application. To start off with paving, kind of a footnote too on paving is if you're already doing good inspection practices with conventional asphalt concrete, there's no reason to expect that you won't be successful in paving with rubberized asphalt concrete. There's just a few nuances, a few things a little bit differently that you want to be paying attention to. A little bit tighter. Doug, we're not moving here. Just a few things you want to pay attention to. Doug asked me to put together the checklist. And these, I thought, this is a good idea. It's a good chance for me to put together some things that I've thought about for a while here. And one thing I really believe that a good paving job starts with good planning. And what I promote is a pre-paving meeting. It can be a significant amount of time between when you have your pre-construction meeting, typically in an office, and when the paving can actually take place on the job. And one thing I promote is a pre-paving meeting between the inspector, the materials testers, the contractor, 2 or 3 days before the project is scheduled to start. One thing the inspector should have out there, and the materials producers, is they should have an approved copy of the approved job mix formula or the approved mix design, and plan inspection. What continues to surprise me is the number of cities and counties who do not arrange for plan inspection through a qualified consultant or through their own lab, in particular on non-federally funded projects. One of my most common calls at the RACTEC has been, we had a project go bad. First question I ask is, did you have plan inspection? Well, no, but next time we will. Well, next time is too late. And it's been my experience that producers want and encourage proper agency testing in addition to their own QA/QC. They want to work together to prevent problems. I think plan inspection is a win-win situation. It's not real expensive either. Whoops, wrong way. Another thing to consider, method of delivery. Southern California triaxle trucks have become probably the most common delivery method. If you specify in your special provisions you don't want bottom dumps, you want to reinforce that at your pre-paving meeting. Some agencies are reluctant to use bottom dumps, in particular for rubberized asphalt concrete. I don't really have any concerns with it personally. It's your decision. But the inspector should be knowing what type of material or what type of delivery method is going to be used. Expected number of tons, and why I ask that is if you use the Green Book, that's going to drive basically how many rollers you're going to require on the project. Caltrans requires 3 rollers, basically, period, which is a good provision. The Green Book allows either 2 or 3, depending on the number of tons per hour. Traffic control. You're going to see a really bad slide here later on traffic control during a resurfacing job. Traffic control, like you know, is very important, not only and primarily to safety, but it also affects the contractor's production. If the traffic control is loose, it's really going to interfere with the contractor's production and may also disrupt the quality of their work. A pull plan. Well, what's a pull plan? Well, it's kind of a phrase that I coined after visiting a project. A city asked me to go out and look at a project that kind of went a little bit bad. It had been paved with a rented crew. Rented crew is basically a crew that the prime contractor had hired. The prime contractor didn't do their own paving. And from the sounds of the talks with it, the crew really did not approach the paving project, which is a major project, systematically. So I think at your pre-paving meeting, you should discuss how the contractor proposes to pull the different lanes. Caltrans requires the through lanes to be pulled first, which I think is a good provision. That provision is not in the Green Book. But where it's really important is if you have a streetscape project where you have bulb outs at curb returns and things like that. You've got recessed parking lanes, et cetera. Those kind of projects are hard to pave in an urban area. So I think a pull plan, even if it's just verbally discussed or the contractor takes a copy of the plan view of the plans and marks it up on how they propose to pull it, it's a good idea, and it helps the inspector, and it also ensures the contractor is going to approach the paving systematically. If a contractor approaches the paving systematically, they're going to get better production and probably generally better quality. Here's something that I actually learned from an inspector when I was in the field, and in urban areas, it's just one of these little things. And do discuss at the pre-paving meeting, how do you want the edge of gutter left? Do you want it left flush, or do you want a little bit of a lip? And in this slide here, what you see in the background is you see an MTA bus. And remember, after every paving project is completed, traffic is going to act like a pneumatic roller and it's going to continue to compact the pavement slightly. And what's going to happen in this slide here is that bus is going to run up there along the edge of gutter, and it's going to keep pounding down that pavement to the point where it's depressed below the edge of gutter. It's going to trap water and start raveling the edge. So one thing that's good practice is to leave a little bit of a lip on the edge of gutter, maybe one rock, about 3/8 of an inch, so that to allow for that continued compaction, so that you don't end up with a pavement below the edge of gutter. Now, the other thing that's really not good practice in this slide here is forcing the contractor to pave up against a very broken or uneven gutter. Longitudinal joints. Longitudinal joints are very important. If you have some special provisions on how you want those compacted, you want extra material definitely raked into those longitudinal joints so the roller can pound them in. Remember, your longitudinal joints are going to be an area where generally you're going to be getting lower compaction. Talk with your contractor about what tack material they're going to use. Are they going to use paving grade asphalt, or are they going to use emulsion? It can make a difference. Obviously, if you're going to use emulsion, it's going to have to break, which is going to take a while if you're out there on the job. The inspector needs to know, obviously, where the plant is going to be delivered from to arrange for the plant inspection, et cetera. I was on a job recently where the material looked pretty good, but it was a bit coarse. And the inspector called the plant inspector and said the material's running coarse. The producer tweaked a little bit, and the material really ended up looking good. It turned out to be a very good material, a very good job. Automatic screed controls, both of those are essentially special provisions items and are required in either Green Book or the Caltrans. Caltrans has an SSP for it. You want to be requiring automatic screed control device on a surface course. Some agencies even require it on a base course, but it's good practice. You don't want somebody cranking up and down on the back of the screed, the wheels. You want to let the hydraulic system do it. So again, if you're an inspector, emphasize that you want an automatic screed control device in place on that. Planned special provisions, reviewed, discussed. It seems like a no-brainer, but again, if it's the first day of paving, your crew may have been on a conventional pavement job for another agency with a different spec. I don't think it hurts to brief the contractor and force them to review the plans and the special provisions for your particular project to ensure that they know what they're paving with. Obviously, crews are moving from project to project. Okay, rock dust blotter. Now this is the example of this horrible traffic control I was talking about. It looks like this truck spreading the rock dust blotter is going to run head on into the Honda Accord there. Also, this is a gross misuse of the intent of the rock dust blotter. And if you look carefully, that lane here, the near lane had already been dusted once. It didn't need to be dusted, nor in that, at that rate. But you as an inspector, I mean, the use of rock dust blotter is something that you should control and have an understanding with your contractor with before you start. It's almost inevitable that you're going to have to use either rock dust blotter. In Arizona, they use lime water. Caltrans calls it sand. It's almost inevitable, and at least in an urban area, you're going to have to do it, either to an intersection, to major driveways, etc. But you want to try and get it put on after the finish roller is complete, if possible. What you don't want is you don't want the surface of your new asphalt rubber hot mix, Caltrans rack type G, etc. You don't want that rock dust blotter embedded into that hot pavement because it will turn it gray and it will take a while to wear off. And at Los Angeles County, we had a project where exactly that happened. It went to the Board of Supervisors' office. We got a complaint on it because the pavement looked old. So don't let that happen. You know, you're going to have to do it, but try and do it at the right time. Okay, prior to paving, obviously we're going to move on now to the job start. Prior to paving, obviously the crack sealing should be complete. Crack sealing is a common question both on conventional and on rubber. When should the crack sealing be done? Crack sealing should be done way in advance of the paving. If you can do the crack sealing either with your own forces, a separate contract, etc. It's really not preferable to do crack sealing just before any type of overlay, if possible. And you want to make sure the crack seal material is left down because the heat from the pavement will cause it to expand, and you can end up with bumps if you keep it too high. And that's regardless of your material type. Now, dig outs, you want to make sure your dig outs are done. I mean, asphalt rubber is a very resilient material, and it's really taken some streets that looked in terrible condition. And have had good life, but you still should do proper pavement prep. Dig outs or good pavement prep is just good practice regardless of material. Cold milling. Is the cold milling complete and the pavement surface swept and cleaned? A very common type of project now is a mill and fill. And a mill and fill is a very dirty job. Cold millings go everywhere. They get up on sidewalks, etc. A lot of times the sweepers on projects I've seen were old city or county sweepers that were pretty tired when the county auctioned them off. You need a very clean pavement surface to get a good bond. You also should be getting a fairly smooth texture on your cold milled surface. If you're a Green Book user agency in the 2000 supplement, you'll see an extensive revision to the cold milling specification. Really a state-of-the-art specification that even goes beyond what's in Caltrans for cold milling. It's pretty amazing what can be done with cold milling now. You can get different textures, but you should be getting a finer texture with really not a lot of ridges. The one thing I saw on a project recently that if you look carefully here you can see too is you want to make sure that the inductive loop detector wires have been removed. And any pavement fabric, you definitely want to be cold milling through pavement fabric and be cautious of inductive loop detector wire. I've even seen inductive loop detector wire sticking up in a leveling course, which is really bad. So a couple things to look for here when it comes to cold milling. You obviously want to remove any cold mix, any temporary AC that you've put at joins and manholes as a safety precaution after the end of cold milling. Obviously get the traffic control in place. Equipment inspected and operational. We're going to see a little slide on that. But as an inspector, take a look at the contractor's equipment and make sure it's not leaking oil that could, result in softening, that it's good in a good operational condition and things like this. I mean, really, if a contractor is gearing up for a major paving project, they really should even have a spare paving machine or a spare roller on site in case one should break down. The crew size. One thing I was really impressed on in a project Doug and I went out to see about a month ago was the size of the crew the contractor brought out. They really had a lot of people there, and they were all busy. Contractor cannot be understaffed and pave a project properly. And again, the automatic screed control, is it attached and is it operational? And the number of rollers on site. And number of rollers, again, it's important to begin with on conventional asphalt concrete, even more important on rubberized asphalt concrete because of the temperature sensitivity. It's critical that the breakdown roller keep up with the machine, the intermediate roller keep up with the breakdown roller, and the finish roller, and just not be trailing the field, but keeping up. Very important. Okay, we'll see a little slide here.
One thing an inspector should do is give a visual inspection of the equipment before the paving starts. Here you have a typical paving machine. It also has a windrow pickup machine attached to the front. On today's paving project, the contractor is going to be using bottom dumps. The advantage of using bottom dumps as the windrow pickup machine is it allows the paving to proceed at a more uniform rate and prevents the bumping from end dumps backing up to the machine. So here you can see the conveyor in the front. The conveyor brings the material into the hopper. It also adds a little remixing to it, even though it's not specifically designed or intended for that. Here in the wings, you want to kind of just check and see if there's any material that's been caked on that should be removed prior to the start of paving. If the contractor is using a rubber-tired machine, you want to just give a visual check that the tires are properly inflated so there's no sag or anything like that that could affect the ride or the cross slope. Here in the back you see a fully hydraulic extendable screed. The width extends through the use of a hydraulic system. When the contractor gets the machine set up and gets ready to do the tangent pull, they'll attach the automatic screed control device, which will be a ski on the side, and the thickness will be set automatically by the automatic screed control device. In general, when the machine gets running, obviously there'll be an operator. There will typically be one person on the screed, even though there's an automatic screed control device. We'll probably be watching the outside of the join against the edge of gutter. So this is your typical paving machine setup here. Here you see the screed, the automatic screed control device, or the ski as it's sometimes referred to. Once they get out here on the tangent portion of the project, they'll put that down. You can see the hydraulic sensors here. Again, that controls the screed.
Okay, one footnote on that slide. That's automatic screed control device you saw there. That actually remains in that position during paving. That's a laser sensor screed. The ski that I referred to during my talk there is the one that actually rides on the pavement surface. This is a different type that actually rides where you see it. And with those sensors, it's all laser controlled. It senses the profile of the existing pavement and rides in that position when in use. Moving on to tack. Tack is critical, again, for either conventional rubberized asphalt concrete. And we've been looking at this slide here. A little comment before a few minutes ago. We're talking here among the presenters on this. You know, this is, you can see this tack is running here. Even though this was to be a pavement fabric job this slide came from, the tack is running. It's not heated properly. And you also see that the cones are above the pavement surface with it just dribbling down onto the pavement surface. Tack should be uniform in appearance. It shouldn't be streaky. It should be uniform in appearance. And a tack is critical, again, regardless of paving material type. One screw up here in this slide here. I will say that both the surface and the ambient temperature should be greater than 55 degrees, and that's in Caltrans and the Caltrans SSP. And 40 is too low on the surface temperature. Again, if you're an inspector, one thing I didn't mention, if you're an inspector, you should be equipped with a heat gun. If you're an agency person, make sure that your inspectors are equipped with a heat gun and a stab thermometer. Both. A stab thermometer is appropriate for truck temperatures and for windrow temperatures. So you want to make sure that your inspectors are equipped with those. Again, if you're an inspector, one thing you can do, you could write it even into your special provisions, is have the tack truck do a couple of passes at different application rates. And see, as an inspector, make a determination on what you want for an application rate. And you can have them do a pass, a couple 300 feet at a certain rate, and adjust the rate up and down. You know, in the Green Book, we pay for tack. It's incorporated in the price per ton for the mix, which is really not a good incentive for proper tacking of jobs. The job I was on a few weeks ago, it was well tacked, but you know, you can make the tack a separate bid item if you wish, and it would better encourage a contractor to do the tack appropriately. Most contractors, at least in Southern California, don't have their own tack trucks. They hire it out. They hire out spreaders to do it. Again, you want to make sure that spray bar is pressurized and at the right height. And all of these modern tack truck, really, it's all touchpad controlled in the driver's cab. They can adjust the spray bar. They can activate surf spray bars. It's really amazing. But you want to make sure that that spray bar is pressurized and that these cones, either single, double, or triple coverage. If you want a good reference on this, Asphalt Institute publication MS-22 does a nice job of talking about tack and about the cone overlaps. Tag on a joint, this is a bit of a crude process here. This is probably not a textbook slide, but you do have to tack up your edges of gutter. You do have to tack up your transverse joints. Probably be better. You should be probably taking the tack and not just wanding it on there, but bringing it all along here, painting it. It's a little bit crude, but you know, I can't say that I've seen separation in a lot of transverse joints either, and this is kind of a common practice, but this could be done with a little more finesse. You know, it looks like he's, but you know, no criticism of them. That's not uncommon. What I like about this slide is it's a uniform application of tack, and this was actually a slide on our county project where we were trying what's called a no-track tack. And it was pretty amazing stuff. You could actually walk on it almost immediately after it was put down. What I don't like is that the tack is way out in front of the paving machine. And in a desert area, the winds blow all the time. By the time the machine gets there, there's going to be dust on top of the tack, which is going to help break the bond. So this was a good material. This was a nice uniform application, but it's way too far in front of the paving machine. Again, during paving, obviously the method delivery should be the same as what was agreed to at the pre-paving meeting or what's required in the special provisions. One thing I like about the Caltrans standard special provision for rack type G is there is a temperature requirement below which the loads have to be tarped. And that's a good provision to put in your special provisions if you're a Green Book user. More and more, we're challenged, at least in Southern California, with haul distances as well as miserable traffic and night paving. You know, require loads to be tarped. It's good insurance that your temperature. The job that I was called out to that I mentioned a few minutes ago that went south a little bit, not bad, but a little bit, it was a long haul. It was from Orange County to a westerly LA County city. It was done at night. I said to the inspector, what was your mat temperatures? And he said, only 270. And I said, wow, at breakdown, you know, you should have been up there around 290. So, you know, that's, you require the loads to be tarped. Contractors may be reluctant, but put it in your special provisions and make them bid it accordingly. Delivery rate. Delivery rate to a job site should be consistent with the ability of the machine to put it down. You shouldn't have trucks in queue waiting to dump, piled back, and the machine should not be waiting for delivery. It is, you know, it's an art and not a science. Producers and truckers are challenged with trucks, with the traffic. It's hard, but you should have a consistent rate. That way your paving machine moves along uniformly, you don't have stops and starts, and you should get a smoother ride. If you're an inspector, collect the tickets. If you're by yourself and you're really busy, at least collect the tickets on the first few loads. Look at the ticket, make sure that it's from the plant where it's supposed to be coming from, make sure it's the proper mix, etc. Verify the mix with the approved job mix formula. Little things like that. If you can get a couple inspectors on a job, have one collect every ticket and have somebody back behind the machine. I really like to have two inspectors on a job if possible. I mean, resources considered, one up with the delivery, collecting the tickets, one back behind the machine, kind of watching the mat temperatures, watching the roll-in sequence, watching the traffic control. You know, some jobs we only have enough for one inspector, but if you can float an inspector out there on the days when they're paving, it really helps. And if you're a construction inspector or you have construction inspectors in your agency, it's one of your most critical positions in your entire organization. And on the days when paving, the inspector is really working hard and they need help. During paving, you want to take a look at the mix. See if any of it, is it smoking, meaning it's gotten too much heat? Is it stiff, not enough binder? Shiny or slumped, maybe too much binder, or is it segregated? And again, segregation is an issue with our rather rough freeways, with our haul distances in particular, if they're using end dumps. That's why I do like the windrow pickup machine. I like bottom dumps because it does give you a bit of a remixing effect, even though the windrow pickup machine is not specifically designed or intended to do that. It will help prevent segregation in your mat.
When taking the temperature in a windrow, it's probably better to use a stab thermometer than a heat gun. Your readings on the surface with a heat gun may not be accurate and reflect what the temperature inside the windrow is. Another point with windrows and bottom dumps is for the windrow to not get too far out in front of the paving machine. Probably about 2 truckloads in front of the machine should be the max because of the cooling effect.
Okay, and that's one thing. And that particular project, if you took a heat gun and just shot the crust of the windrow, the temperature was probably running 260, 270. But you go behind the machine on the mat, and it was 290. So again, the crust temperature of a windrow can be deceiving, more accurately and better measured with a stab thermometer. Now, I talked a little bit about the pre-paving meeting about an automatic speed control device. The one you see here in this slide is the traditional ski. It's about 30 feet long, where it does ride on the pavement surface, existing pavement surface or cold mill surface. Again, one of the advantages of the bottom dumps and the windrow pickup machine again is you see the machine is moving along pretty much at a uniform rate. The bottom dump isn't too far out there in front of the machine. Pretty consistent paving rate. Okay, one thing here is, again, this is what goes back to, again, talking about the pre-paving meeting, edge of gutter, flush or lip. And here you see them raking the gutter, the edge of gutter, to provide that lip that we talked about earlier. That's important. Now, you got to have one thing to look for, and the contractor should be having looters behind it on the edge of gutter. In particular, if there's a pass where it's a fill-in pass between 2 passes and completed, you're essentially going down the middle. Make sure the contractor has looters out there looting in extra material on both transverse joints on those closure passes. So the roller can come along and shove in some extra material in there in the longitudinal joints and get better compaction. Rolling, again, you're going to start generally with, you want to make sure always the drive wheel is forward, and rolling is somewhat analogous to painting walls. You do gradual passes, gradual direction changes, and right out of MS-22, they do a nice job about talking about the rolling sequence. You start off with your transverse joins, your longitudinal, work from the outside edge to the crown, breakdown rolling low to the high. Generally on the first breakdown pass, if you're going to be up against an edge of gutter, they won't go exactly against the edge of gutter. They'll sit back maybe 6 inches or a foot on the first pass, and then they'll come along, pick up the remainder, and then start going back and forth and back and forth. One thing is, too, is you don't want to see rollers sitting. Rollers should not be static on any areas of a fresh mat. I was on a job, and here was a finished roller sitting there right on a finished mat. No, the roller needs to keep moving. If the roller needs to stop, they need to stop on an area that's not been paved or a surface that, that's outside of the limits of paving. You don't want that static loader. If your project has concrete bus pads, have them stop on the concrete bus pad, but don't have them stop anywhere and be static on any portion of a hot mat. And one thing I really like about this slide here is this is a contractor using a heat gun. And this was actually a very good job. This crew is very good. But here a contractor, again, using the heat gun. And mat temperature. Mat temperature is critical. You got to get 290 if you're using the green book, 290 or above on that breakdown. Remember, with your gap graded aggregate, it's a little bit harder to pound together. So you got to have temperature. And remember, compaction is directly proportional to the service life of your pavement. You got to get the 95% to get the full service life out of your pavement. The other nuance with rubberized asphalt concrete is on the breakdown pass, the vibrator is on, as opposed to conventional asphalt concrete, it's done with its static mode. So remember two things, mat temperature, vibrator on, close behind the paving machine. Those are the keys to getting the 95% compaction and getting the full service life out of your pavement. Here you see a transverse joint. Just a little bit of a lip there on the joint, which is good. Proper sequence. You can't really come in fully perpendicular because there's an edge of gutter here. But again, good rolling sequence here. And again, low to high. As I mentioned, vibrator on. What I like about this slide is the breakdown roller is right up behind the paving machine. That's one of the keys like I just mentioned. Again, same thing, right up behind it. Okay, intermediate. Remember on the intermediate pass, the vibrator is off on the intermediate, as opposed to conventional where the vibrator is on. Again, your finish roller, basically the intent of finish rolling is to remove the roller marks, any iron out, any little ripples. By the time your intermediate pass is done, you should have your proper compaction. Rock dust blotter, this is actually not a bad application here, but it is messy. Rock dust blotter is messy, so again, you want to try to minimize the use of it if possible. Discuss it with your contractor and make sure you and the contractor agree to the proper application of rock dust blotter. It is very fine and it will blow all over the place. So again, one last thing, one comment here, longitudinal joints coincidental with lane lines. Caltrans requires that, the Green Book doesn't. As you can see here in the lane on the right, that's exactly where the contractor, you can put it in their special provisions, because what you don't want is you don't want traffic driving with their wheel paths in a longitudinal joint. Remember, longitudinal joints are going to be lower on compaction, et cetera, and they will help spread the joint. If the traffic is driving in a longitudinal joint, they're going to encourage it to spread, which obviously you don't want. Again, expect what you inspect, and one thing here too is make sure that part of your quality assurance program, you're either out there with a nuclear gauge, making sure the contractor's getting the proper compaction, and or that you core the project after it's been completed to make sure that you get the 95% required compaction. And I didn't come up with this saying, it's one I inherited when I started doing these back in 2001. Expect what you inspect. So with that, thank you very much.
We have time for just a couple questions while I get the next presentation booted. So if you have any questions, anyone with any questions, wait for the microphone to come and you'll ask your question.
A couple of points on tons per hour in your pre-job meeting. You might look at what the plant not only can physically produce, but what Air Resources Board allows in that area. The other thing I had to note on was ambient temps. You said 55, but it's also, you want to check the project specific. Right, Ann?
Yes, absolutely. Special provisions.
You had mentioned crack sealant briefly. Can you expand on that and discuss how important you feel crack sealant is on an asphalt rubber job?
Eric, right here. Microphone.
Asphalt rubber is a very resilient material, but at least in my presentations, I always try to encourage, irregardless of that, proper pavement preparation techniques such as crack sealing, irregardless. I think crack sealing is one of the fundamental points of any pavement preservation program. It can be done as maintenance. It can be done in advance of a resurfacing. I do think it is very important to do that properly. Crack sealing sometimes has gotten a bad name because it's been put on too thick or spread on top of pavement, or you've had motorcycle accidents and things like that on it. It has been somewhat subject to some litigation. But I encourage both dig-outs and crack sealing, even in the use of rubberized asphalt concrete. I mean, I've seen it done without it, and you can do it without it if you so choose. But again, I try to keep these things to the fundamentals on that. I mean, what I'd really like to see is some advancements in tack coat materials so that the tack coats that go down, maybe at a little thicker rate, would also serve to doing some crack sealing as well. And hopefully there'll be some research and some producers out there that will come up with a material that will sort of serve both purposes and provide some infiltration into the existing cracks in the pavement in the future. But I would recommend I would continue to recommend crack sealing as part of a pavement preservation maintenance program. Keep the crack sealing material down below the surface. Do it way in advance of resurfacing, so that you don't get bumps in the surface once your street is resurfaced.